Hello chess players and welcome. Today's game that we're going to cover is the first game from the great book by David Bronstein, Zurich International 1953. The players are Szabo and Efim Geller. A small background information: Szabo was the top Hungarian player for about 20 years. He attained his GM title in 1950 and reached a peak rating of 2565 in 1973. He studied under Geza Maraksi, and also a point of interest was apparently a prisoner of war of the Russian troops during World War II. His opponent is the venerable Russian player Efim Geller, who later in his career coached Boris Spassky and Anatoly Karpov. He was a world top 10 player for about 20 years. He's a pioneer of the King's Indian defense and very notably has a lifetime positive score versus Bobby Fischer. So today the opening is the Catalan, and the game chapter in the book starts with Bronstein's discussion of dark square weaknesses, which was very interesting to myself as an amateur player. I am not a master or even an expert, but just an interested amateur. And Bronstein talks about dark square weaknesses before the game starts and how they can be used, and also his realization of how dark square weaknesses can create weaknesses on the light squares for attack, as he illustrates in this game. So let's get on with the game. I hope you enjoy. And Szabo is the white pieces in this game, Geller the black. So the game begins. And this is the first point of comment in the book. When white plays queen to c6, Bronstein talks about white hatching a plan to weaken the dark squares. He says this plan also includes an exchange of dark square bishops to further white's aims in the plan. So now the game continues. And there is his bishop exchange that was spoken about. Now Bronstein makes comments here too on black's knight f6 move. He states that knight to b6 would have been better, because knight f6, he calls it a small but serious inaccuracy because it takes black's knight out of the main theater of war and allows white a small combination of knight takes b5 followed by pawn to b4. So he says knight to b6 would have been much better for black. So we continue. Now here we have one of the key points of the game, and I believe the lesson that Bronstein was talking about with the dark square control. Here he recommends that queen to a7 would have been much stronger and a prettier move, he calls it, intruding on the position on the dark squares and then making targets of the pieces on the light squares. So I believe that's what he was illustrating in his comments in the introduction. He calls queen c5 a consistent though uninspired approach. So that's what he was talking about, I believe. So this is also after the queen e7. It might be an interesting position to set up on the board and check for yourself, because there are a lot of interesting combinations possible, and this I believe is the key point of the game. If he had played queen to e7, after this, it doesn't seem to go very well for Szabo. So Geller takes the queen, and now this recapture was Szabo's threat. Bronstein says that rook c5 would have been strong and given a clear advantage for white, but Szabo seemed to prefer taking with the pawn and using it as a threat to later advance. He felt it would give him chances according to the book. So it turns out to actually be a weakness later in the game. And then we continue. Now, this is also another key point for Szabo in the game, determining the result. After this king f1 move, white declines his repetition draw. And Bronstein says, even though he no longer has the better position. This is, I believe, too, an extremely important lesson that Bronstein gives in his comments in this book that goes for players all abilities, and he talks about how when players of all strengths lose their objectivity in a position, as it seems Szabo may have here, they invariably lose the game as well. So there may be a situation here, and for practical players, just everyday players, I think this may be the strongest lesson in the whole chapter, maybe even more so than the whole dark square weakness concept. So, interesting stuff from the great David Bronstein on that. We'll continue now. Geller brings his king. Szabo brings his king. Now, interesting point in our game now. Black on rook c7. He's eyeing Szabo's c-pawn, who was going to use it as a threat, but now it seems that it's almost his threat has become a liability in the position. So we continue and see what happens. Szabo brings the rook, and now it's a full-on threat to Szabo's c-pawn, and the game seems to hang in the balance now. Geller collects the pawn. Bringing the knight back. And now Geller's eyeing more targets, it seems. And now, unfortunately for white, his rook is starting to run out of real estate in the position, so he doesn't have many choices now. And now it's forced. He must play. And now the plan for black has become clear according to Bronstein, and he wants to create a passed pawn and obviously make a queen. So this is pretty much Geller's game to win at this point. He's got his pawn. And this move I didn't really understand. Stronger players or anyone who seems to know, feel free to chime in. As just a regular amateur player, I don't think in this position I would have wanted to trade rooks, but I could be totally wrong. Just doesn't seem right. But who am I to second guess world-class players? So chime in the comments if you see a good reason why. And the rook is exchanged. Geller's king comes. And that's the end of the game. Geller's going to get his queen. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you liked this game as much as I did, and maybe learned something. It seems the author's focus was on the dark square weakness lesson in his comments in the introduction, but his mention of objectivity, I feel, is an equally powerful lesson for average players like you and me. Give me your thoughts, what you think of this game, and if you liked it, make sure you like, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe, and tell me what you'd like to see, and I'll make videos about it. Thanks, and have a great day. Bye now.